Welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast, the podcast that appears as regularly as a Rangers Kilmarnock match. This week on Heart and Hand, well, that wasn't the most fun Saturday evening, was it? So, welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar. I'm your host, as always. Now, some people say that Americans are nothing more than a bunch of reactionary, gun-toting, cheeseburger-eating, didn't turn up to the war until they were attacked rather than fight for freedom the way we did. Bunch of bastards. I don't agree with that, and that's why I'm happy to invite onto the show none other than Shane Nicholson. How you doing, mate?
I'm good, David. You know, I must say, despite what everyone else says, you're an okay guy too. So.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea that I don't have access to guns. Actually, the thing that when I was in America I really wanted that I would have tried to smuggle home was a thing called a stun baton that I hadn't seen one of these before, but it's basically like a cattle prod and you could buy it from Walmart, which I think is just sensational.
Have you not seen it? That was the Mounties' weapon of choice back in the
Of course it was.
80s.
Well, I didn't know you could buy them over the fucking counter in a shop.
Yes. I'd go to Walmart right now and walk out with 10.
Well, if I had one of them, I had an idea that it was going to be it'd be like Judge Dredd, except it would be called the Arsehole Patrol. And basically, you'd walk about. So if you saw like a teenager spitting needlessly, just walk over and stun him, and his mum would go, "Why'd you do that?" It's like he was being an arsehole. He's been judged by the Arsehole Patrol. So that idea is still out there, but apparently smuggling these things into the country is illegal unless you buy thousands and get them direct from an arms manufacturer. Then you're good.
Could you do a Patreon around that as well? Is that another thing you could set up?
I could film it, couldn't it? I could do a little Libby. But welcome back, Shane. It's now the ages since we've had you on, and some good news for those of you who followed, shall we say, some of your previous work with the return of the mighty Copeland Road Org.
Yes. No, we dug it back out. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I don't really feel like doing podcasts, so I'm just gonna come on here and bother you every once in a while. But
yeah, I've kind of cornered the market in podcasts these days. You'd be.
It's God, can you imagine me doing like a 6-hour show anymore now?
I'd prefer if you didn't. I've got people paying for that shit now. Don't give it away. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, you're just getting into my racket, dude, and I'm not down with that at all. But it's good to have you back. Some cracking articles up there already, and people should be going and checking it out. Of course, always support independent Rangers media because, as we've seen, the media in this country aren't all that friendly towards us. So it's nice to get some balance in there. Shane, let's go to Saturday night. I'm afraid we must. And Rangers took on Kilmarnock yet again. I honestly feel there's been more of them than there are Death Wish sequels at this point.
Has Jimmy Page done the soundtrack to one of the Kilmarnock matches yet?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't even think Jimmy Page appearing on the roof of Buckingham Palace to do Kashmir would have made the match that much more interesting. It was... Kilmarnock are really well organised and they work really hard and they're well drilled and well coached, but there's not really an awful lot of football being played by them, and they stopped us. And I think both teams, in all honesty, with about 20 minutes to go, went, do you know what, we want to win it, but we're going to make damn sure we don't lose it, and we'll take our chances in the replay.
Yeah, I don't know, is it 6 times we've seen them now this season?
This will be the 6th, but there will be a 7th after the split. Yeah,
I mean, you know, they play in their own half. They play in about 2/3 the width of the pitch. You can't break them down. You know, I mean, really, your only hope is firing crosses in and somebody getting on the end of the header. And Jermaine Defoe is never going to do that. So, it was awful. You get people like raising the question as Gerrard somehow backed himself into a position where his system doesn't work without Morales. It's just that's breaking them down. It's not going to happen, especially against us. I mean, because they're going to turn it up 10 notches every time they're playing us. So,
correct. No, they are. Look, I think sometimes you do need to give a bit of credit to the opposition side that Kilmarnock are actually very well drilled. Everyone knows their job. Everyone knows where they're supposed to be. They double up constantly, and they, as you said, they get that extra 10% in their legs that makes them run that bit harder because it's us and it's live TV, Scottish Cup game. It's a big match for them. And they didn't threaten, in all honesty. They'd won in the first half Malumbu that Andy Halliday cleared off the line. Apart from that, I don't think Shagger was tested. It's a shame we didn't use one of his suspensions up if the appeal's not rescinded, but we will come to that as well. But the Morelos thing, you brought it up there, and I don't know if it's a case that the system he wants to play doesn't work when Morelos isn't there. It's so much as it will take a bit of time for people to get used to it in the side, because quite often we were playing these long diagonals that Alfie will just go and win and control and make something of, and it ends up looking like a half-decent ball. But you're right, Jermaine Defoe is not going to barrel out to the wing, collect a ball in his chest, turn round and smash past three defenders. That's not his game. His game is about sharp movement inside the box, and we weren't, I thought, alive to that. I think he made a lot of good runs that the players, the midfielders, didn't quite pick up, never mind the Kilmarnock defence. And so it looks as though he's ineffective, and in a way he is, because you didn't get the ball to him, but he was there to be found. We just couldn't find him.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to that, in so much as our three midfielders were passengers for pretty much the whole match. And I'm still, Scott Arfield, I think, can be a very fantastic piece, but he's obviously still, whatever happened in the Old Firm match, he's still carrying something.
Yeah, he's injured, definitely.
He's 2 steps off the pace all the time. I mean, you can sit there. There were multiple times in that match where Kent, looking for a return ball, and Arfield's already. It's just, I don't know. It's tough to watch. Because he is talented enough to do that. But
absolutely. I mean, I think that all three of them are good players. I don't think either him or Jack got involved in the match at all, in all honesty. I thought McCrory played well and got better as it went on. I'm a big McCrory fan. Yeah, I thought he competed really well. And I think you can see progress, because I remember going to Rugby Park just before Christmas last season, and he was up against Malumbu and he bounced off him. Malumbu just absolutely dominated him from start to finish. And he didn't hear. Yeah, he got the better of him sometimes. He will do. He's a good player. But McCrory, I thought, overall won the battle. And that's physical development. But also, his game's coming along a little bit. But a wee bit surprised we didn't see Stephen Davis a bit earlier.
Yeah, that was actually the first, we were in the old requisite group chat at halftime, and I mean that was the first thing I was calling for, was just get Arfield off and get Davis on. I mean, at least give you some kind of chance out of the midfield. But didn't happen. So
is this maybe a sign of Stephen Gerrard's conservatism slightly at times? It has been mentioned before that he can be a little bit conservative in his substitutions, in that it's a situation where he's going, well, I could put him on and we could win the game, but those three are working really hard, and the key thing at the moment is not to concede a goal. And I suppose in a way it was. Had Kilmarnock got one, we were out. We were not scoring. I think it looked at that stage. So are there times that you think maybe he's like, well, we're maybe playing a 3, I could roll the dice and it could come up a 6, but it could come up a 1 as well?
I don't know. I mean, I'm almost to the point where I have to wonder if it's like a contractual obligation for Rangers managers not to make substitutions before the 60th minute. You just cannot do anything. Don't change shape. Don't change any of the personnel. 61 minutes. All right, now we can start even talking about it before we even get to the point and make it up. I don't know, but again, I mean, we're still talking about a first-year manager, right? I mean, he's developing just as well too, so. You see the individual development in players like with McCrory, then you take that on as a accomplishment of the manager as well as the individual. I think we've seen better from Gerrard as the season's gone along, and you just have to hope that he keeps developing at the same rate some of the young players are too.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on then to probably the biggest talking point of the match, or the biggest talking points, which unfortunately were refereeing decisions again. Firstly, Rangers penalty. I thought Stonewall penalty. I thought Kurt Broadfoot dived full length and made a great save, but you're not really allowed to do that.
How was that?
that was my thing. That the only thing I can think of is that the referee thought it was. See, the last man thing and the handball thing's meant to be if it's a deliberate attempt to play ball. But I've seen guys sent off for handling accidentally on the line with the ref say, but it doesn't matter that you didn't mean it. You know, you had your hand up. I thought it was a red card because it prevented. I wouldn't say, I don't know if it was going in, but it was certainly on target.
Well, it's a denial of a clear goal scoring opportunity, right?
Yeah, and deliberate as well. Yeah. It's not like the double whack. You know, if it's a legit attempt to play the ball in the box now because of the whole double jeopardy thing, you get the penalty, but you don't get the red card anymore. So that's the only thing I can think saved him. But he was very lucky when on a yellow card. He made another 3 fouls, at least 2 of which were verging on yellow card territory, but he stayed on. The real one that was the absolute shocker, of course, was the Alan Power kick at Ryan Jack. And he goes, leads with a boot at head height. I've watched it several times. I cannot see. And, you know, I'm trying to take off the blue tinted specs. I cannot see how in any planet, in any football match, that isn't a red card, because he's dangerous. It's excessive force. He's out of control. He's endangering an opponent. Every single phrase you want to take from
ticks every box.
Yeah. And of course, the bigger question is, and you know, we'll come to this in a minute, is of course sightings. But how can a ref be a yard away from that? And this is what we mean when we talk about. When people call it cowardice, call it corruption, call it even just bad refereeing, which is what I would like it to be, because I don't want it to be something sinister. But how can a referee look at that if they know the rules and they're trained and not instantly think, as you said, well, that ticks every box for a red card, he's got to go?
I'd like to think with somebody as experienced as Madden that hopefully the ongoing meet.
This was Muir on Saturday. Alan
Oh,
Muir.
sorry, yeah. Sorry. Well, even still very experienced official. That doesn't start trickling in to the psyche. The want to I don't know. I guess give in to the like this campaign of pressure, media campaign of pressure, or what the fuck Celtic have done from the match on 29 December up until now to heavily try to influence referees. Like you say, you hope it's just a guy missing a call, in which case it's excusable, and in which case then the compliance officer should surely be able to take action on it if she chooses. But that's not going to happen. I don't know. I mean, he's right. Like you say, he's 2 yards away. He sees it. We go back with was it Beaton in the Aberdeen match, I believe. Or was that Matt? And all right, yeah. Now I know where I'm making my subs here. But with the Shagger incident, where he's taking this 2-match ban, I mean, he's clear-sighted and 15 yards away. He clearly saw that incident and chose not to. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess they're probably all just shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that
there's a certain element. Get full-time officials finally. We want to sit around and talk about VAR and all this other stuff, but make them full-time officials finally. Make that their profession, not something that they. Obviously, they're very well compensated, and some of them this might be their only gigs. But honest to God, I mean, we've been talking about this shit for 10 years now. You know.
It's never their only gig. They all have other jobs, and you're right. It's very lucrative if you work in another role and are a full-time professional referee, because they walk away with $1,000 from every match. Now, if you do 30 to 40 matches a season on top of a full-time job, then yes, it's hard work, and yeah, you're going to have to put hours in. But you're doing all right for yourself. Let's not pretend that these are our poor referees that are hard done to. They do well out of being a referee on top of their lives, and I do think that asking them to go full time isn't that big a step. What I do enjoy, Shane, is whenever you mention full time referees, that what the SFL get their press cheerleaders to do is scan English football for a mistake in the top division and go, well, there's a full time ref. And you're like, right, well done. There were 10 matches. You found in one of them an incident that the ref was wrong. Nobody's saying referees don't get things wrong. It's how often they get things wrong. And in Scotland, it's an awful lot. And that takes us to just before we move on, Tav misses a penalty. Manager says he's still on. I admit, and I realised the reason for it because I was doing for a show on the site. I was looking back at 2003, and it was an interview with Barry Ferguson. He talked about Mikel Arteta's penalty against Dunfermline. He said, well, I'd missed two, so I was off them. And so I think I took from that back then, and it just crystallised in my mind as a rule that if you missed two in quick succession, you were off penalties. So that is two in a couple of weeks. The manager has said he's continuing. Any doubts about that, or any questions that maybe might be, Alfie, you have a wee run with this?
I don't understand. Why has he changed how he takes penalties? I don't understand this. Because when he was doing the just blast it in the top of the net, it was fine. Now he is hitting the penalty that every goalkeeper in the world would want you to hit. Mm. It's waist height into the side of the net. And it is long. And obviously it's always going to the right for him, to the left for the keeper. So there isn't a goalkeeper in the world that wouldn't want to face him taking penalties right now. He's obviously settled in under this being his technique. You literally train kids at youth level. Do not hit penalties in this fashion. It's the easiest one to save. If you're going to hit low, hit it on the deck, play for a corner. But I don't know. I don't understand it. Yes, Alfredo definitely put him. When he's back, give anyone else a chance right now.
Yeah,
give him just going to hammer the ball.
I've just always been with the rule that miss one, fair enough, that can happen. Miss two in quick succession. If you miss your 15th and your 56th, that's okay. But if you miss two in a matter of weeks, then I would take someone off them. Yeah, but it doesn't appear the manager is going to do that. That's his decision, of course. So.
Conservatism. There you
go. He loves Tav. He absolutely adores Tav. He's one of his boys, and yeah, fair enough. But I just think it adds it, because the next time he gets one, I think there will be a nervousness among the supporters. But he showed against St Mirren he can rise to it. But moving on then to kind of dull match. A draw, probably Rangers had the better chance, but a draw probably a fair result, and we'll take them back to Ibrox. But you mentioned their citing, and a lot of controversy came about on Friday night when, after what appeared to be sustained pressure from the media, particularly Sports Scene over here, which ran the incident over and over and over, Rangers found one player cited and one player had an appeal dismissed. Alfredo Morelos' strangely quickly fast-tracked appeal was turned down, and his red card given against Aberdeen stands, and he faces a 3-game suspension, one of which has now been played. But Alan McGregor was cited for the aforementioned incident. Rangers fans slightly up. Now, I will qualify this by saying a lot of Rangers fans, sensible ones, they felt it was a red card offence, and it was something that he probably did deserve punished for. I don't agree with that, but I understand that certainly there's enough dubiety there, because there've been ex-players as well, there've been fans. So I'm okay, believe it or not, I'm okay with them being cited. I personally disagree with it, but I get it. I can understand it. What riled me was the fact that there were 3 incidents in the Celtic Hibs match on the same night, which were as bad, if not far worse, which is the Brown tackle, the Simunovic elbow, and I don't even want to call it a dive, because Oliver Burke's attempt at it is a disgrace to the good name of people who have at least learned how to dive properly. 3 very obvious citations, all of which were rejected. And that's when it grates a little bit, because that's when it's, well, hang on a minute, how is this system fair?
The 3. Well, Scott Brown, he's never going to be retroactively punished at this point, is he?
True.
We know that. It doesn't matter. He can go over the ball 2-footed on every single tackle, and he's going to be lucky to get a card on the pitch. So, and an interesting point, this came up after the match, but over the past 2 seasons, he's been yellow carded in the same percentage of matches as Morales. Now, one is a thug, and a detriment to the game and scarring the image of Scottish football worldwide, and the other one is Scott Brown somehow. Yeah. The flying elbow certainly belonged in the WWE scene, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was. That's, and I'm not being a dick about it. I'm not going, oh, it's a Celtic player. He quite clearly runs at the guy with his arm raised and then jumps into him. It's, again, reckless.
Very, very Lex Luger quality.
I mean, and the Burke dive, the only justification we've heard for it was, but the ref didn't award a penalty, therefore he didn't get an advantage. That isn't the rule. That's not the rule. They made that up.
It's funny, as we point out on the Crow there. I mean, there was no precedent and no guideline by which to get Morales this 3-match ban. I mean, had they followed their own precedent that they followed with him earlier in the season, he very obviously shouldn't have been banned. So, I mean, it's just the lack of consistency. You can look at the individual incidents and the sides involved and whatever, but now we're talking about the same player being reviewed under the same guidelines from an incident that happened at the same ground earlier this season. That one was rescinded, and this one was upheld, and now he's given the extra match as well. So it baffles the mind. I can't. I don't know. Because we said on the site. I mean, it's trial by sports scenes, whatever the hell they want to show. And of course, you had Jonathan Sutherland online there after the fact, as I said, building a house out of straw men. That we how are we supposed to make these editorial decisions on one? It's literally your fucking job. Your job is to make the decisions around what is shown on your program. If you show a replay of one incident in the Rangers match 7 fucking times and then don't show even a single instance of any of these instances, guess what?
That is, I think, something that's riling Rangers fans, because it's not just been mentioned by Rangers supporters, it's been mentioned by fans of other clubs that they feel that in matches that they attend that don't feature Rangers or Celtic, and we'll come to Celtic in a minute, but that there is this what they call trial by sports scene, which is that certain incidents in matches are not picked up, but then on sports scene they will pick up something that happened in a match and their player will randomly get a ban. And as I say, that is not just Old Firm related. That they'll say, well, hang on, I was at a game last week and this same thing happened. You didn't put it in your coverage for whatever reason, and the guy escapes a ban. So how is this system fair? And it's hard to argue with, because we all know that if something is flagged up on sports scene, and it always will be if it involves us, that the likelihood is action will be taken. The stats suggest this, with, of course, the news that Rangers top the table of on-pitch citations. Celtic haven't had a single one in a decade. That it becomes very difficult to avoid, as you say, that editorial policy, which I think we all expect from the BBC, is skewed one direction. But the authorities surely have a duty to all their clubs to say, we either implement this system wholly or we accept we can't implement it at all.
I don't know what the solution is. And the problem, it doesn't just, it isn't just a problem just at that level. I mean, just go back and look at the back pages from the day after, right? And this is when you have someone, you don't have a panel in there making these decisions, right? A dedicated panel. I mean, in this case, you had 3 Tims brought in to expedite this process on a Friday afternoon. I mean, that they stack the panel out of isn't it 10 people available? I think that they have to draw from.
Yeah.
They picked the 3. They knew what result they were going to get. But you go through the coverage the day after. What was it? Nut job, red rage, red devil. And there was all the picture of Morales' foot happening to come down on McKenna's nuts. I wish he would have fucking followed through and kicked him a hell of a lot harder had we known this was going to happen. Not one of them showing the bastard kicking him in the face. So I don't. I mean, one feeds the other, right? The trial by sports scene gets fed by the media driving into that narrative that feeds in the CEO. And if you get the results that you want, guess what? You're going to keep doing the same thing. I mean, So at some point, the SFA has to be able to step in and say, no, we're going to take back control of our own game, not cede it to the fucking television producers, and actually, regulate.
And I think that there is growing concern among not just Rangers, and that's something that Rangers have to work with other clubs and say, right, okay, we're all getting together and we're gonna deal with this. Power has, of course, not been cited, and I think we all knew that anyway. But it's again this you'll probably say, oh, the referee saw it and dealt with it at the time. Yet Hibs had a player who was booked last week who's been cited for the same incident. So it's blatant and obvious inconsistencies, and of course, when that happens, people are going to look for reasons for them, and the most obvious reason is usually because of personal decisions. Speaking of which, in opinions and colouring, Shane, for those of you who've heard him before, works in the media and has done for a number of years, and I always like to chat to him a little bit about things that I think I notice in the media to see whether or not I'm barking completely up the wrong tree or if there might be something to it. And Shane, one of the things that has concerned me, and I don't think it's unfair to say that you live in a country that there's a little bit of racial tension. Would that be fair?
No. What?
Oh, no, I keep
reading. I never noticed it.
Right, okay, oh, that's cool. But it's certainly probably more prevalent where you live than in Ayrshire, which is, shall we say, a fairly not much of a melting pot. We don't have an awful lot of disparate cultures down here. We've got proddies, and that's pretty much it. But yeah, but one of the things I've noticed about is what I would call subtle confirmation bias that comes in the media about certain players, and the one in particular is Alfredo Morelos. And it's a big word when you bandy the word racism about it, and I know it makes people, especially in Britain, uncomfortable, so I accept that and I try not to do it. And I think that you can kind of use the term xenophobia. Most people agree. A lot of Rangers fans think it's nothing to do with that with Morelos. It's more to do with who he plays for. And I do accept that that's a huge thing. But there is still an element of, I believe, a certain forwarding of a narrative. And it comes about through little things like hothead, Latin temperament, South American, that they do that kind of thing. And it's something I think that maybe we are not so familiar with, but it's a term that you hear a lot in America, which is othering, which is about taking someone out of, if you like, the mainstream group and saying they are different and therefore you can treat them differently and react to them differently. Is that fair with Alfredo, or am I being a little bit, as the term says, snowflakey?
I think it's 100% fair. I don't know. In your case, I don't think it's a strict racism issue. I mean, the city I live in here of 150,000 people. I mean, you can draw a line down one street on the west side and pretty much split the town in half. I mean, it's just American reality. It's steeped in these racist ideologues and everything that's persisted for 400 years.
You should build a wall. You should build a wall or something.
It's great. I know. You couldn't fail, could it?
No, that's a great idea. Quite cheap as well, from what I hear.
The thing I'm seeing with Morelos, and if we've seen it, just go back to Pedro. Go back to Caixinha, right? Mm-hmm. It's not really racism, is it? It's more of if we can borrow a term from our old Donegal friend, the xenophobia of some sorts. I mean, it is othering. It's being able to decontextualize somebody, which allows you to then kind of almost in a sense dehumanize them. Yeah. It makes it easier for you to construct these attacks around them that have nothing to do with, in this case, I mean, very clearly we're talking about somebody's professional ability, right? We should be talking about his qualities as a footballer, but instead, like I was just saying, you go back and look at these back pages the day after the 4-2 match, in which, if you follow the narrative online, especially outside of the bubble of Scottish football, everybody who was watching this match in England, I'm pretty sure it was on TV here, or else there's just a lot of people streaming Rangers matches for some reason. We're talking about, I mean, it was actually a good spectacle. It was a well-played match. It had a little, there was a lot going on. But of course, the very next day in Scotland, what's it about? Again, Alfie's killing his career. When the fuck did Steven Gerrard say that? I miss that in the press conference after that.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is the ability for them to spin this, and the want to spin it, and then I wouldn't call it racism because it's not steeped in the same way the problems in this country are, but it is very much a xenophobic or sheltered, the Islander type position is where I would leave it.
I think that I'd agree with you, by the way, that it's not based in racism. It's not he's black and I don't like him because of that. I agree with that, because in terms of that removing, yeah, but in terms of removing someone from, as I say, the mainstream, and therefore being able to treat them the same way they do it with us as fans. They do it with Rangers supporters, where we become this big amorphous mass of just, they are not people, they are Rangers fans. And therefore we can ascribe them this set of beliefs, and therefore we can write about them in ways and talk about them in ways and treat them in ways that we wouldn't do to other people. And it's been happening to Rangers fans for decades now, where you are told you believe this. Hang on a minute, I don't recall saying, no, you're a Rangers fan, therefore you think this and you support that, and therefore you're all the same, and we don't need to treat you as individuals and with the same rights as other individuals have. We can write about you in a derogatory way, we can speak about you in a derogatory way, we can treat you as somehow less. And that is now being extended towards, as I say, our best player, because they fear him, because he's our best player, because he's the best player in the country. But it doesn't make it right.
No, I mean, like you're saying there, on the wider societal impacts. I mean, just look at the actions pre-match by the police, who, from some accounts were embarrassed on some levels of what they had to do. I mean, stopping busloads full of supporters on their way to watch a football match. I mean, this is your priority, right? I mean, this is a social priority. This is the prerogative for what, as a society, you should be concentrating on in your country right now. No, it's absurd. And like you said, I mean, that element does, again, it's the flow, the same way with trial by sports, seeing the different layers that flows into the different paths and different streams it has to go down. It does the same thing here. And then, yes, it ends up coming down on, I mean, an amazingly gifted footballer who we should, I mean, how as a football fan in that country can you not feel lucky? I mean, yes, he doesn't play for your team, but have a player that gifted playing in your country again. I mean, it's been a while. It's been a damn long time since you've seen a player that good at that level at this point in his career, doing what he's doing on a football pitch. And instead of accepting that and embracing it and using it as a mechanism to be able to continue to elevate the game, the first reaction is to tear it down and to immediately want him out. I don't know. It's sad. I mean, it's a sad indictment, but it's what people have been saying about Scottish football since, I mean, at least the early 90s, certainly coming through the 2000s and everything else, is that it's not that it's become a backwater, it's that it has willfully done it to itself by the way it's treated people who've tried to come in and better the game.
Yeah, look at this funny foreigner with these ideas. And you're right, it does go back to Kashinya, where you can go back and say, well, anything that's different, anything that's not, if you like, something that the old guard of the game are comfortable with, gets viewed with suspicion. And look, you can simplify and say a lot of this is just due to the fact that people don't like Rangers, but I do think that it's a technique that's been applied to us as supporters, that's now being applied to him as a player, with the idea of to chase him out of the game because they fear him. And look, Rangers will sell Alfredo Morelos in the summer because I think he's at the stage he wants that move and we'll cash in on him. But this stuff doesn't help with that. And yeah, it's really awesome. We all know that he's not that type of player, he's not that type of lad defence is trotted out constantly by the media if someone does something similar to Morelos, but never applied to him because he's South American, he's a hothead. That's what they're like. That's that's the undertone of it, and therefore he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. He doesn't get he's not that type of lad. Whereas if you speak to people in and around Rangers, they'll tell you he's actually quite a quiet kid. The other players quite like him, keeps himself to himself really because his English isn't good, only chats mainly through and 2 Daniel Candeias, which understandable. But it's bizarre that this guy gets treated the way he does and spoken about the way he does. I mean, I saw some dreadful things online last week. People might have seen the Aberdeen match thread, the Aberdeen chat room match thread, their official, not official, but one of their bigger fan sites, where they refer to him as Harvey after Katie Price's kid. And there were some other terms used there that, to be honest, I really didn't think you would see in 2019 being used about him. And I don't believe for a second that sort of language would have been getting used about, for example, Moussa Dembele, if he had scored against them, because I think a lot of it is to do with the fact that they have been emboldened to react that way to Morelos, because he's not a human, he's just a thug and an animal, and we can refer to him the way we like, because he doesn't deserve the courtesy or the basic decency that anybody else should have.
I mean, can we go back? Could somebody go back and maybe look at press clippings from his previous stop before he landed at Rangers? I mean, was there the same kind of hatred? And
no,
of course not. Of course not, because it doesn't exist. And I mean, look at the simplification of South American this thug, or whatever. Was Ronald? Did we all sit there and watch Ronaldinho and think, man, what a fucking thug that guy? No, I mean it's. That's not. I mean, it's applied on a completely reactionary basis. Just according to whatever the hell the circumstances are. In this case, a very good player with Rangers who is able to use his body to outmuscle these big, strong Scottish fucking playing on a rainy fucking Thursday night in Arbroath kind of guys. Okay, but they're not as good at football as him. I mean, that's what's happening. It's not him. Being a thug or doing these little dirty tricks. I mean, you see that one sneaking in there. Dirty is always one of those little othering words. No, he's just better than him, and enjoy that.
Mm. Yeah, it's depressing, but unfortunately we've got a long way to go before we fix it. Shane, as always, it has been nothing but a pleasure chatting to you. I will get on to you later on about where to send the aforementioned Mountie-style cattle prods, but where can people go if they want to read more from the wonderful Mr. Shane Nicholson?
Well, you can always find me on Twitter at @void. It's OF Void. And the CopelandRoad.org is back. I am not writing everything, so don't blame me. And if you don't like it, don't fucking read it. I mean, that's all I can really tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a voluntary consumption.
Yeah, I always get surprised when people say that. It's like, I hate that guy Edgar. And I was like, well, I'm not intruding on your life, mate. You actually have to go out of your way to listen to the shit. Yeah, true.
How we can burst in their house and tie them down.
No, I've got
Patreon accounts for the whole family.
Yeah, I swore to the magistrate I'd stop that. So rules are rules, mate. You've got to just follow that through. Listen, Shane,
it's meant to be broken, David. Rules are meant to be broken.
Probation isn't. It's frowned upon. Okay, well, the Patreon that Shane has been referring to is our site where you get to 5 shows every single day, and to visit that, it's just patreon.com/heart and hand, and just $1.99 per month. I think you'll enjoy it. We'll be back on Thursday with a preview of the weekend's match. Until then, I'd just like to thank our executive producers in London, Mr. Mike Lee and Paul Mills, and to thank my guest. It's been too long, and we'll have him back on in a lot shorter this time. Shane, thank you very much, buddy.
Thank you again, Brad.
Right, we'll talk to you again on Thursday. Until then, have a great week. Bye.